Hello and welcome again to the Community Action Risk Mitigation blog series with Ken Ackerman. Ken is the creator and the manager of virtualcaps.org. He's also a researcher and has worked with the partnership on multiple occasions to research evidence-based and evidence-informed practices. There are multiple resources available on the resource bank of the CSBG TNTA Resource Center that Ken has found for us and that are available to you all. And he's also a certified peer reviewer for the Award for Excellence and Pathways to Excellence in Community Action. So he's very qualified to be talking to you all about risk mitigation. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Ken.
Great. Thank you very much, Natalie. I want to express my appreciation also to the partnership in general for giving me this opportunity during 2015 to put together a series of blogs that I hope have some value added for community action agencies in the area of risk mitigation, which is a high emphasis area, of course, covered under the CSBG organizational standards, among other areas, and I'll be referencing those periodically through the presentation. Before we get into the webinar content, I thought it would be helpful to get a feel for the role that everyone on this webinar fulfills in their agency. So we put together a quick poll that I'd like to have launched right now, and if you would please respond accordingly, and we'll see where your area of involvement is, and that will help me as I go through the presentation. So you should see the poll at this point. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds more, and then we'll close it out. Okay, hopefully everyone has replied. So let's see, we're about to take a look at the results here. Okay, so it looks like we have quite a few in the fiscal area, about a third of the respondents there. Some program managers comes next, HR, and then a bunch of other. So as you hear about these different resources, certainly they'll relate to your particular area in some cases, but others will be outside of your area, and we certainly hope that they'll be shared with the appropriate groups or individuals in your agency. Okay, so what I've started out with is a listing of all the blogs that were published or posted over the past 9 months, and as I mentioned, there were 9 of them. You can access this listing and other material that will be shared and showcased throughout the webinar through the links that are appearing on your screen. So all the underlined blue text are actually active links, and each slide will have various links on them. But you can see this listing here, the first 4 blogs that were posted, which we'll be going over momentarily, include the online risk mitigation tool that the partnership has made available to the community action agencies. Another area, blog number 2, relates to strengthening boards. Blog number 3 has to do with putting a dashboard together to help your agency track the progress you're making in different aspects of your operations. Article 4 is in the HR area. And again, the links at the bottom, you can open this document, and each blog can be directly accessed, or you can go to the website. As you see, one of the links is to virtualcap.org, and they'll all be on that page. So the next 5 blogs that we'll be going over is leadership development, succession planning, a major area of interest and concern throughout the Community Action Network. Blog number 6 focuses on efforts to advance and strengthen partnerships that your agency develops to help further your goals and objectives. And finally, the last 3 are grouped together really in the whole area of fiscal management and oversight. So starting out, I thought it was key to really share the online risk mitigation tools that the Community Action Partnership has put together with the Nonprofit Risk Management Center, specifically geared toward community action agencies. And before we get into the details of this, I have another short poll that I thought would be useful to us. So Natalie, if you could launch that. And you should see on your screen, we're basically interested in hearing if you've had some experiences with this online risk mitigation resource. And you can see there are about 6 responses. If you could pick one of them and let us know the level of your experience with the online tools. So we'll leave that open for a little bit as you go through that.
You should be able to access the poll on the bottom right portion of your screen. And there's about 30 seconds left.
Okay, about 10 more seconds, so hopefully you've picked one of these, and we'll see where you are in knowing about these tools. Okay, great. So here are the results. Okay, so nice to know everyone at least has heard of this who responded to the poll. About 20% have actually completed the risk assessment. So as I go through these slides, those of you who have experience with it, if you have any input or feedback to give, we'd certainly love to receive that. I noticed a handful have started the risk assessment. Quite a few have heard of these but haven't used them, so hopefully after this presentation you will possibly get connected with the online tools. And before I get into it right now, let me just say that an overview of the whole webinar. This has been viewed as somewhat of a Reader's Digest approach at presenting these materials, because in effect, each item that you will learn about, many of them have had webinars on their own materials, so you can access them. I'm not going to go in great depth on any of these, but I will give you some key facets that they offer, and hopefully that will whet your appetite to dig deeper as you go through it. So the first one, as I've been mentioning, is the 2 online risk mitigation tools. You can access it through the link that you see above the center image, and they're really, well, through registration, you notice the red line there going to that. It's a very quick and easy registration process. And once you register, you'll be able to get onto the risk management portal, which you see in the center again. There are 2 pieces to the risk mitigation tools. One is on the right, the risk assessment, the online risk assessment process, and the other on the left are for templates to a large number of policies that you could develop to help support your risk assessment and operational efforts within your organization. So I'm going to start out with the risk assessment tool. And if you notice then, there are 10 modules. I've separated them into 2 groups. The first one on the left is module number 1, and that really gives you somewhat of a overview of how to go through a risk assessment process. There are 5 different steps in the process, lettered there from A through E, and it's basically a circular process where you begin by establishing the context for your whole risk management effort within your organization, thinking about your overall operations, what you must do to protect yourself from risks, what you shouldn't do to protect yourself from risks. Also building out who's responsible for handling these efforts. The second part, acknowledging and identifying your risks, is basically to take a look at 2 levels of what you do. One would be what I'm calling your generic levels. In other words, the typical kind of risks that any operation might have. For example, someone walking into your facility and there's some hazards there that might cause them to slip or injure themselves. That basically can happen in any line of business or operation, those types of things. And then the second area are the programmatic focused risks. So, for example, if you're doing early childhood efforts, whether it's Head Start or child care, et cetera, there's other types of risks that you have there in terms of protecting the children from injury. Regrettably, I occasionally see articles of Head Start children being left unattended on buses, that type of thing, or inadequate supervision in the classroom. So all the various risks that you have on a programmatic level. And then the last 3 basically are pretty standard in terms of a program implementation effort. One is to determine what your highest priorities are, where your greatest levels of risk are found, to set them up as the ones that you're going to put a lot of emphasis on and make sure that you're protecting yourself as much as feasible, putting your program into action and finally tracking how you're doing and evaluating at the end and starting from the beginning again. So at any rate, that basically is module number 1. The other 9 modules, you see the topics there on the right. And, basically, you'll go through the risk assessment process. Some of you have done this already. If you have any input in terms of how you fared with that, we'd certainly love to hear that if you want to submit that through the chat area, or actually through the Q&A, I guess, since it's content-oriented. Well, having gone through the assessment online, ultimately you'll end up with a printout, if you notice the image at the bottom left of the screen here, that'll give you a risk assessment report for your organization, which you can then use to move forward and advance what your efforts are to protect your organization. The second facet of the online tools has to do with, as you noticed at the beginning, my policies or my risk management policies. And this one is really offering a great base of resources for community action agencies. If you notice, I've listed out the 23 categories that these policies are grouped within. And I must say there are 157 templates. If you do the math here, actually, you'll see that there are more counted up because some of them cross over more than one category. So, for example, code of ethics would be under board and governance, it would be under ethics, et cetera. So some of them are duplicated throughout the My Risk Management Policy area, but nonetheless, you're able to sort through this and begin picking ones that are useful to your agency. And it was interesting because when I was at the Partnerships Conference in San Francisco last month, I was approached by a director of an organization who asked me if I had any resources on Virtual CAP or elsewhere helping to establish gift policies for an organization. So basically I thought, well, let's take a look at the online risk management tools and see what they have. And sure enough, there was a build a gift policy template on there, which I'm showing you on this particular slide. So I sent this off to them, and I thought it'd be a good illustration to share with you as well. It's to how this build a policy tool works. And basically, you can see the images there are, in fact, the template that is provided, and each of the various templates look similar to this. The neat thing about it is you could pick the aspects of this that you want to maintain for your own agency, or if you look at the top right there, you're able to edit it by changing the content of any of these areas that are already provided for you, or you can add to it. You can delete pieces, et cetera, et cetera. So it really is very much something that you can customize. You can print it out in Word or PDF, and as I mentioned, you can add new policy segments. And so once you do, if you take a look on the left there, you get a printout of what your intended gift policy will be. So I think it's a very streamlined way for you to begin building very strong policies in areas that you may be lacking them right now or wanting to review what you have and modify them accordingly. If you're wanting to learn more about the online risk assessment, there were 2 webinars, a 2-part series over there on the right. You can open that link when you access this presentation and get more details on how the 2 tools work on this online resource for you. And I did put down, of course, the CSBG organizational standard that relates to risk assessment, to the risk assessment process. So, okay. The second second blog posting that was put up this year was to take a look at what can we do. This one in particular, it's a webinar. What can we do to really strategically work to recruit the strongest board members possible to advance the mission of our organization? So really this webinar, while it's focused on strengthening your boards, it really hones in on the whole notion of recruiting. And so it speaks about strategies to attract and cultivate and recruit new board members, the best candidates that you can, and it provides you some tools to organize your board and to engage board members. You notice the listing on the right there shows the topics that are covered by the webinar. Toward the end, there's a toolkit that is shown. And that toolkit offers quite a few really good starting points for you. It includes a board calendar, which shows on a month-to-month basis the type of high-level efforts that the board should be focusing on for each particular month. You can certainly customize and add to that for your own agency. There's a recruitment strategy checklist that's offered, a letter to prospective board members. One that I think is really key is a board member matrix where you begin to identify the kinds of strengths that you have on your board in terms of the skills and experiences of your board members, as well as the broad range of contacts and influencers that your board members altogether offer to your agency. I really think that the board member matrix on this toolkit is a really good starting point in thinking strategically about building your board from this point on. There's a board member job description as well as a board manual checklist, and that's under the toolkit that you'll be able to access through the link that you see on the screen there. Okay. One thing that I tried to do in certain cases was to expand upon the resource that is highlighted on a particular blog posting with some other related resources. And in this one then I came up with a variety of additional resources to help strengthen your boards. Of course, there's the organizational standards. Category 5 relates to board governance to see the basic expectations that every agency needs to fulfill in the area of board governance. You can hear the webinar recording and access the slides for that as well. The partnership has a Standards of Excellence Technical Assistance Guide for the Community Action Standards of Excellence, and one of them has to do with board structure and function. That's part of the Partnership's Award for Excellence in Community Action. You can access that and take a look at the board elements of that TA guide. On this particular slide, I offer you two other guides, one that CapLaw put out and one that Meliora Partners put out. Actually, the second one, I gathered many of the resources, almost all of them, in fact, that are shared in that guide, and that will give you further templates and resources beyond the ones that, or in addition to the ones that are available on the online tool. So I encourage you to look at these as well. And finally, I finish up with this blog with a Community Action Agency board self-assessment process that the Indiana Community Action Association compiled under funding through the Federal Office of Community Services. And it's really, I think, one of the best that I've seen to help board members. Two things I would say. Number one is to get a sense of the overall span of their responsibilities. If you look at the topics that are covered through this board self-assessment, there are 10 of them altogether. The last one is just some basic demographic information. But if you go through that list, you'll really see that it is the entire realm of board responsibilities. And if you look at Community Services Block Grant Information Memorandum 82, it's a nice parallel to what this self-assessment process involves. The interesting thing about it is that the first 8 items, there are questions under each one, of course, that board members are asked to assess in terms of where they feel their board stands in these various areas. And typically there are about 5 questions under each of the first 8 items. But when you get to item 9, board structure and operations, and item 10, individual board member self-reflection, there are 13 and 18 items under there. So a heavy emphasis of this particular self-assessment is on the board itself, not only on the roles that they play, but how the board is doing, how it's structuring, and how the board member individually feels they're fulfilling their commitment as a effective board member. And one thing to conclude, they also have areas for board members to provide suggestions to improve the board and resources that could be brought in to help as well. So I really encourage you to look at the Indiana self-assessment tool in addition to the other material. Okay. The third blog might be something that you're familiar with, using what's known as dashboards or scorecards to help monitor the progress that your agency has made in various critical areas. I have a number of tools here that I'm sharing with you. The first one is a webinar that the partnership sponsored. Actually, it was put on by CapLaw, and you can access the recording and the PowerPoint slides. I will say that this one in particular is largely on fiscal indicators. Okay, it slightly covers some programmatic and other operational indicators, but generally HR, for example, generally it's on fiscal. Okay, this was one of the ones that really was working to help agencies and boards as well have some good tools in that area. What I thought would be helpful to add to that, if you see the bottom of the slide, is a library of sample dashboard indicators. This was put out by Compass Point, which is a well-known organization providing resources for nonprofits. They have 10 categories as shown on the right, and you can see it goes beyond fiscal, of course, and incorporates human resources, boards and governance, marketing, communications, and so on. And if you notice, they have in those 10 categories over 160 indicators that they put out that you might want to draw from in developing your own dashboards. And of course, you can come up with many more on your own, but I think it's a good starting point to see what some of the key indicators are that have been gathered together. The way that Compass Point has put together their library of sample indicators is to give you various categories. As you see, there are 10 of them there. They then list indicators under each one. Then they have a target. So in other words, as you build your indicators, you come up with a target and then come up with what they call green lights, yellow lights, and red lights, which are basically ways for you to target and provide a range in terms of when you feel you are on track, being green, when you're close but maybe not quite there, yellow, and when you are really far behind the area, the level of accomplishment that you're looking for would be red, which means take action now. So this dashboard indicator, again, there's the webinar there, et cetera. Several other resources for dashboards. CapLaw has another webinar recording there on constructing a community action dashboard in particular, and you can see this one goes into more than just financial information. It includes the other areas shown at the top of that slide. And one that I think has great value is the second one on this particular slide. It's a toolkit put together by the Community Action Partnership with the support of the Balanced Scorecard Institute organization, obviously, that has a lot of expertise in the area of balanced scorecards. And truthfully, it's more than just a how-to put together a scorecard, excuse me. It goes through a comprehensive process for your organization in terms of strategic planning and building outcome measures to then factor into a scorecard. So if you notice, it's very much aligned with the Roma cycle with the 5 stages that are shown on this slide as well. And then finally, I leave you with 2 more resources. One, several workshops have been presented at the Community Action Partnership annual conferences by the Community Action Partnership of Mid-Nebraska. And they put together a basic scorecard that they use. You can access their example of it in PDF and Word, and you can see that they divide it up into different areas. But it's a good starting point if you'd like to just see how they approach what they do. And finally, I headline this as one more item. Okay, I hope I'm not overdoing this, but This one is put together by GuideStar and the Nonprofit Finance Fund. And it basically draws information from organizations' 990s, which GuideStar provides access to. There is a cost to this, okay? Nonprofit cost is $250, but it's worth considering even if you don't decide to purchase it, which I'm not encouraging necessarily to purchase it, but take a look at the sample report that is available for free, and you might find some of the ways that GuideStar presents the data would be of value to you, and you could use that to begin putting together your own data in a similar fashion. And basically what they do is, among other things, they show 5-year trends in terms of different fiscal indicators, revenue, expense, balance sheets, and so on. That really makes it a very visual and helpful presentation for your organization to see areas that you're doing well in and areas that you might need to do some thinking in terms of how you're going to adjust what you're doing to do better in those areas. So at any rate, this is something that I share with you. They do have a video showing what it's all about as well as their sample report. Okay. The fourth blog is in the area of human resources, and this one is basically a webinar that you can access that's put together by Wipfli, and I'll say that it really has some excellent aspects to it. And in particular, if you go through the webinar, they divide the HR policies into 5 sections. And in each section, they give you a table of contents and then go through a slide presentation on each section. They give you specifics in terms of what you should consider including in that section, and of course on your own you can expand upon it and modify it accordingly. But there are sections beyond the introduction, which is the first one where you're providing some basic organizational information. Has to do with your employment policies and practices, with your employee benefits is the 3rd section, timekeeping and payroll is the 4th section, and employee conduct is the last section. So I know we have some HR staff on the call today, so definitely if you haven't seen this yet, it'd be well worth your while to do that. And I did put on this slide, don't forget there are HR policy templates under the Community Action Risk Management portal, which is the first blog. Okay, I'm going to do one more of the blogs and then take a breather for me and see if there are any questions or comments before I get into the second half. But the 5th blog has to do with leadership development and succession planning. And, you know, it's really interesting is part of Virtual CAP, a number of years ago, I was doing some site visits to local agencies. And I was at an agency in New Hampshire and learned that they had an internal leadership development program that was really quite extensive, and I was very impressed by that. Now, since then, of course, there's been a lot of effort in some states at the state level as well as nationally to work on what is viewed often as emerging leaders. But nonetheless, whatever your agency status is, the whole notion of leadership development and succession planning really come hand in hand. And if you take a look at this toolkit that the partnership has provided, it's called Batter Up, Building Your Leadership Bench, really gives you some good framework to put together an approach to look at where you are in terms of, in the event that you have leadership turnover, whether it's something unexpected or something that you're projecting either within the near future or the long-term future. How are you faring in terms of in-house having the capacity, A, to sustain your operations in the event of a quick, unexpected leadership turnover, whether it's at a CEO level or a program manager level, because all of those require a great level of knowledge and expertise to sustain operations at a high level. And then secondly, how you're deliberately planning replacing people as they move on, retire, or otherwise. So if you go through the Batter Up Toolkit and listen to the webinar here, you can see the graphic on the right-hand side of this screen. Again, it's a process that the toolkit walks you through in terms of your agency's commitment to sustaining your work and to advancing your work regardless of leadership turnover, looking at your current workforce in terms of who has some capacity to step into leadership roles or who can be developing that capacity, as well as the needs your organization has in a continuous basis, both now and in the future. And then developing your leaders, establishing your program, working to identify your talent within the house and evaluating along the way. So taking those steps, basically looking at what the toolkit provides you, and I won't read this line by line, but basically it has those steps mapped out here, and you can see in particular that they have quite a few, that it offers quite a few tools in terms of assessing succession needs, looking at your internal strengths, that's in the second grouping there, developing individual plans, and then creating actual succession and leadership development plans for your organization. So Batter Up is most definitely a vital resource, I would say, at this point in time for community action. And let's move on. We have a little more from this one. Oops. There we go. Okay, sorry. And so you notice it talks about doing some assessments, again, and creating what's called, they say, the toolkit calls it an LOL sample report. Now, I know a lot of people use that abbreviation in texting and so on, but this stands for your level of leadership sample report, okay, another acronym to add to all the others that we use, okay. And Batter Up, building your leadership bench. Another part that is offered is a further toolkit from the partnership called the Sustainability Toolkit, and this is the last part for leadership and succession planning. But if you notice, there are 3 different documents shown on this screen, and they're all part of a toolkit that was put together by Transition Guides, which is a high-level organization that works with many nonprofit and possibly, I'm not sure, but probably for-profit groups as well in leadership succession and leadership development efforts. And so if you look at the 3 guides here, you can access them all through the links shown. And I'm going to spell out for you what each guide offers, and they all have a webinar. So again, you can get much more detail on these by viewing the webinar recordings. So the sustainability planning part of the toolkit is a guide for sustainability planning. Really is a way for the current leadership to begin looking at creating the foundation of the organization to strengthen its ongoing sustainability. It's not necessarily a succession planning tool per se, but more of an organizational capacity building tool. So this would be applicable, to wherever you are in your organization, whether you have hired a new executive director, CEO, you have new senior managers, et cetera. This is a great tool to access. The other 2, however, are more honed in on the whole notion of succession planning. The second one there has to do with looking at your CEO, your executive director, ultimately needing to be replaced, as well as on an emergency basis, if it's unexpected, how you can handle that. And finally, the third guide, part of the toolkit, the third guide is a process for managing the transition, which is really key. They offer you some tools there. So as I said, I'm going to take a little breather. I'm wondering, do we have some input, anything on the online assessment tool if you've used it, or perhaps encountered some difficulties with it? Hopefully not, but anything that you know about that or any of the other areas that we've covered so far that you'd like to go back to? Natalie, do you see anything come in yet?
Yes, there is one question that came through regarding the online risk assessment tool. The question was, is there any thought being given to making the risk assessment tool from the Risk Management Center to work with CAPs that have multiple locations?
You know, since I don't really manage that tool, I can't give a definitive answer, but I would say, if I'm not mistaken, since it's an online tool, the organization gets a sign-in. You have to register, and you have a username and a password. So I would imagine that you could use that from a computer anywhere, and if you share that with staff who have roles in risk assessment, that's probably possible. Now, I'm not sure if you can have multiple assessments filled out for a single agency, but if people have different parts of the assessment, I suspect you can open it from whatever computer using that sign-in information. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so all that is true, and Cashin just logged in and has a few things to add as well.
Yeah, so you can have multiple users that feed into the same report. So you can have, say, your executive signs in, but he makes kind of sub-users because maybe your HR director is going to do part of it, your finance director is going to do another. And the standard, if you're thinking back to the organizational standard on risk assessment, does say organization-wide. So presumably your HR systems and fiscal systems, governance, all of those are going to be true regardless of which location you're going to be at. The only tricky part, I think, that could come in would be some of the things like facilities and the program in vulnerable populations and those, because you might have kind of different answers depending on which center you are talking about. So in that case, there isn't a way at this point that I know of that you can have like a separate assessment or have multiple answers to the same question. So you would either have to do a separate for those kind of couple of pieces, or you would have to try to think of it in that kind of global thing. Do we meet this or not? Well, if we don't meet it across all of our facilities, then technically we don't meet it, or something along those lines.
All right, and also I'm thinking you're able to put a team together from your different locations who could address that type of area as well. Okay, was there anything else?
That's the only question that we've received thus far, but I will remind people you can submit those questions through the Q&A box or send me any comments that you have through the chat window, and we can share those with Ken.
Okay, great. Okay, moving on to the sixth blog. This is a particular area of interest of mine as a community action agency executive director for just under 25 years. This was something that we really emphasized in our agency, and I must admit that it wasn't always as fulfilling as I wanted it to be necessarily. Sometimes creating a partnership takes more than just going to a meeting and sitting at a table with other organizations and other stakeholders. But certainly community action partnerships is core to what we do and how we're effective and bring people to the table to address the problems in our communities. So this toolkit, the Collaboration Checkup, put together by Barbara Mooney, largely by Barbara, on assessing and improving your community partnerships. There's a webinar, again, as I mentioned, many of these have separate webinars you can access. And you can note the different areas that the toolkit covers. Now, you probably know that partnerships do get covered in the CSPG organizational standards under Category 2. You know, as a peer reviewer for the Pathways to Excellence in Community Action, partnerships has also been a facet of that assessment process. And it's interesting to me, the times that I've been involved in reviews, seeing some agencies, I don't know if this is fair to say, but I'll use it just to draw attention. They somewhat will say glibly they have 350 partnerships. So I wonder often, is that a sign of effectiveness, 350 partnerships? And generally I think it's not the number of partnerships that organizations have, but it's the depth of partnerships and the effectiveness that is drawn from those partnerships, again, to address the goals of the organization and affect the changes and advances that we're trying to achieve. So at any rate, this toolkit really touches on that in a wonderful way, and I would almost make this required reading for any senior manager at a community action agency to really get a handle on how can we really push ahead to get the kind of partnerships that we need and do some monitoring of how they're going and trying to be effectively directing these partnerships into ways that make a difference in our programs. So that was a little bit of a soapbox. I don't often get a chance to do that, but I do want to urge that to the degree possible on this webinar. Another resource that I share on partnerships is one that's been on Virtual CAP for quite a number of years, and it's interesting because just this month we have received a new version of this tool. It's a partnership tracking tool that was put together by Community Action, Inc. in Kansas. And I've always shared this as a way to deliberately and strategically plan your partnerships, create your partnerships, and ultimately evaluate your partnerships. Well, what the agency has done, I know it's a small image there, but you can download the Excel spreadsheet. And what they've done over on the right-hand side, those columns, all tie the partnerships into specific parts of the organizational goals, okay, the national reporting indicators and so on. So please download this, share it with the appropriate staff, and make use of it. You can do that from that virtual CAP link at the bottom, which also, by the way, features some material from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, which you might find of interest. Okay, the last three blogs that we have here, as I mentioned at the beginning, really are grouped together to address with fiscal management and oversight. So the first one, and maybe I should put a little bit of an editorial in this one as well. I track news from around the country on a daily basis related to community action. And I must say, when I get some red flags, you might say, in terms of the stories that are reporting challenges, difficulties, and crises that are going on in community action, which fortunately aren't that many, but when you read about them, at a minimum you shake your head, and there's more than that you do at other times. So the point being, fiscal area is a key serious level of vulnerability, as I'm sure you're aware, and I know we have fiscal staff on the webinar today, so I hope that these resources are helpful to you. And the first one put up here has to do with the role of executive directors in terms of fiscal management and oversight. Often executive directors rely heavily on fiscal directors. I certainly did, but it doesn't mean abdication of responsibility. So it's really important, particularly for directors who don't have a great level of exposure or experience with fiscal operations, to get a handle on some of the chief responsibilities that a CEO has in that area of operations. So again, another webinar recording accompanies this toolkit. It covers 4 areas of oversight. You can see them there. The last one, financial information for decision making, of course, facets into strategic planning ultimately as well, while the others have to do more with ongoing oversight. And there's a 2-page checklist that you can access. I show it on the right there, which gives executive directors, and truthfully this is useful for program managers as well, the type of responsibilities to be carrying out on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, and the second page goes into on an annual basis. So out of this whole guide, it's a 41 or 42-page guide. You can look in the appendix and make a copy of that, read through the guide, and hopefully that'll strengthen the effort that the management staff, management team has with fiscal management. And before I actually get into Blog 8, I'll do another little segue here. I visited a community action agency in Vermont a number of years ago, and they actually had their program managers provided with access to their fiscal information online. It was read-only, okay, but they held their program managers accountable for really having a hands-on awareness and oversight of their own programs, fiscal operations as well, which in community action isn't necessarily common, I don't think. So if that's something you're interested in, you might consider that as well. So the 8th blog kind of is a good companion to the last one. It's what's been titled Must-Have Financial Information for Boards and CEOs. And I love the first bullet there of what it features, good news or bad news. It's kind of like a dashboard, basically. Okay, so if you move ahead with the fiscal dashboard, you can parallel what's put out in this webinar, recording and presentation, with the approach that you take to the dashboard. Okay. The last bullet goes back to what I just said about senior staff not necessarily having a great level of expertise in financial, in the world of finance in terms of managing budgets, et cetera. So this one talks about how to help make sense for non-accountants. Okay, and lastly on here, the organizational standards, Category 8, has to do with fiscal financial operations and oversight. Just recently there was a webinar recording. You can access that in the slides to it. And the partnership, I believe, will very soon be issuing a technical assistance guide on this area as well to meet the CSBG organizational standards under this category. Okay. And finally, maybe this is appropriate, I hope it is, the last blog that we posted just recently was on audits and how boards should approach and handle the audit process. So of course the audit is the concluding assessment of how you've done over the course of a year with your financial efforts, as well as other parts of your agency operations as the audit covers that. There's a good toolkit there. I will say it's a lengthy toolkit, okay? So is every board member going to read this? That's probably a stretch, but I do think that certainly is something boards should be aware of. Board treasurers, finance committee members, executive committee members, certainly if they're not able to read it from beginning to end, that perhaps there's a way for the agency to give some good overview and access to the information that's in this guide. Some of it is hands-on kind of stuff in terms of issuing an RFP and the engagement letter and all that. So take a look at the webinar recording, go through the toolkit, the table of contents, and so on, and take advantage of this, because your audit really is the official document that goes to all your funding sources. It goes to your boards that certainly get it, review it, and act upon it. All your funding sources get it. It's available to the public, et cetera. So it's something that can't just be put on a shelf until it gathers dust, until the next audit comes up. I don't need to say much more than that, I don't think. So those are the 9 blogs. We have a little time left. I want to share some information before we close out about Virtual CAP. Let me ask if there are other comments or questions before we wrap up.
I haven't received any questions on this end, but just a reminder to get in any last-minute questions through the chat window or through the Q&A box.
Okay, great. Let me breeze through these last slides here. Basically, I would be negligent if I didn't share with you that there are many other resources available through Virtual CAP. I hope you'll share this with others in your agency. This is a flyer, 2-page flyer that you can download showing you in all areas of community action operations, internal and external, program level, et cetera. There are many resources on there. You can get this flyer and take a look at it. Follow us on Twitter or Facebook, get our RSS feed, et cetera. Here you go. Okay. So hopefully when you get the presentation, you'll click on these links and learn more. And also, we started publishing putting out a new publication called Virtual CAP Roundup. We've had 7 issues so far, and in here you can keep up with a lot of what's happening in community action. as well as related resources to our network. You can see each issue includes the focus topic, successful funding, efforts, innovative programs, and news from community action. If you'd like to just get a glimpse of it, take a look at our complimentary copies. The first 3 were made available as complimentary, and the fourth one there's a slight preview of, so I hope you will do that. And that really concludes the webinar. I'd be happy to get further comments or questions. And my contact info was on the opening slide. Feel free to get in touch, either email or telephone. I often am asked if I know of resources in certain areas or information. I'm more than happy to share that with that exception. So again, thank you to Natalie for her work with today's webinar and the partnership for the efforts they're doing, and I am grateful for the opportunity to be part of that.
Thanks so much, Matt. Just wanted to say thank you, and I'm really excited about all the resources that you had to share and that there are links so everybody can access those. The slides and the recording will be made available on the partnership's website, as well as stored in the resource bank of the CSDG TNPA Resource Center, and I'm sure it will also be advertised on Virtual CAP as well. So I haven't seen any other questions come through, but I will take us back to the slide with Ken's information on it, so you can contact him with any other questions that you have, as well as any of the partnership staff. It looks like one question did just come through.
Okay.
No, I can't see it. All right, Ken.
Looks like it might actually have been the same question from earlier.
All right, I think we're all good. So any last words, Ken, before we sign off for today?
No, I think roll your sleeves up and keep working hard. That's about it. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, great. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.